The Syntax of Things by Arisha. Chapter 32. To be a Fool. Convivialities. Severus had to literally push him to the door. Potter yawned and stopped still 2 steps before he reached it, his head falling back against Severus's chest. Startled, Severus stepped back and Potter swayed on his feet. "What time is it?" Potter murmured. Almost morning, and Potter shouldn't have slept on his sofa. "Don't ask." "Right." "Potter." "Yeah." "If you are to exit the tower again after curfew, I ought to inform your head of house. This is not something I am willing to permit." "And why not very well inform her now?" Inform her now. I don't think I'll stop it." The irony was too great. No, the frustration was greater. "Besides, Professor, I think Dumbledore knows. I mean, he doesn't mind, I think." Of course he didn't. It definitely was a joyful hobby of Dumbledore's to expose the Wonder Boy to all possible new adventures. "The headmaster knows," he agreed. "And I know too. Be assured, though, that I am not going to turn a blind eye to it." So, despite Dumbledore's maddening pliability, "You are forbidden to wander around unless you carry a signed permission from Professor McGonagall or the headmaster himself." Well done. End of discussion. However, end of discussion. If you find yourself experiencing insomnia again, you shall immediately seek a staff member. Potter shrugged as he stepped outside the chambers. "It's not right to wake up the professors whenever I want to. I'm not going to do that," he said. "Anyway, I should have just gone to Professor Slughorn. I'm sorry. For getting you into trouble, Professor." Potter. End of discussion. "I might give you permission to exit your dormitory when you need to. I repeat, only when you absolutely need to and cannot do otherwise. End of discussion, end of discussion, end of discussion! If you commit yourself to contact your head of house or come to me instead of roaming the corridors." Guilty as charged. "My neck. Here, take it. Please, kill me now." Potter looked confused. "Are you sure?" Severus nodded. "It is only reasonable." Harry did receive a present from Miss Weasley. It came with a freezing Hedwig, who hooted and cleared her feathers frantically as she rested on the stone windowsill. The present had been nicely wrapped with dark red paper and was decorated with a large yellow bow on the top. The gift card read, "Happy New Year, Harry," on it, and Harry touched the letters with his fingers. It was a box of chocolate sweets, he figured quickly, and he ate most of them while sitting on his bed. Hedwig watched him, so it was just right that he offered her one. It turned out that she didn't like sweets, and although grateful, and even a bit surprised, Harry couldn't help but think that this wasn't a present that Miss Weasley would have normally chosen. Perhaps she wasn't planning on buying him a present at all, but had changed her mind at the last moment. Aunt Petunia would always buy presents for neighbors she didn't like anymore, or for neighbors that she never liked, with the sole intention to appear nice and kind, or, as she would put it, to silence those who can't wait to badmouth her. Miss Weasley certainly wasn't like that, but Harry feared that she only bought him something to pretend that as a mother she was above school fights. Putting on his invisibility cloak, Harry descended to the great hall and found it empty. The hovering candles had been burned short, a faint smell of fur and earth coming from their melting figures. Fragile and dying, their light flickered sadly as it illuminated the stones. It wasn't a cold night, or at least not as cold as he'd expected it to be. Sitting down before the dormant hearth, he lit it with his wand and watched as the new flames danced over the old ashes. He heard steps. Pulling his cloak back over his head, he held his breath and tiptoed his way towards the hallway. The sobbing voice was talking too fast for Harry to make out the words, and as he stepped closer, he saw that it was Malfoy, with his eyes filled with tears and his back pressed against the wall by him, of course. "Let me help you, Draco. I am closer to him than you are. You don't have to be alone in this. I know things that you don't." "Well, tell them to me then!" "Fool! The school is empty and you chose such a day to act. What were you thinking? He greeted you half an hour ago. Trelawney saw you. Filch saw you. He's already suspicious." "I wrote Dumbledore," Malfoy said tentatively, "yesterday morning. I said I had a fallout with my family and wished to spend the rest of the holidays here. I know what I'm doing." It was too dark for Harry to make out their faces. He carefully stepped closer. "You wrote him! Wrote him! No wonder the Dark Lord puts so little faith in you," Snape said. He does. You left proof, you idiot. Snape's hissing was low, but apparently enough to make Malfoy choke around his knob again. Potter's here, too, he said, spitting Harry's name with disgust. He didn't leave for the holidays, but no one cares. Why is my staying suspicious and his isn't? Why do you want me to be scared instead of taking action? Potter's an orphan. The headmaster takes pity on him. He won't treat you the same. An orphan. Something broke inside Harry's sternum, and he held his breath, gritting his teeth. He willed the sentiment away. Now tell me, who would be more likely blamed for any suspicious events, Potter or you? The Dark Lord... Keep your voice down. The Dark Lord would never let Dumbledore touch me. Leave me alone, Snape. The Dark Lord will punish you and your father if you fail. And who will take care of your mother then? You might think you can do this alone, but you know you can't afford the risk of failing, Draco. Snape paused. His voice was silky and almost kind when he continued. Let me guide you, like I've always done. Only I understand your determination. I know this is your moment, your turn to finally prove who you are, and accepting guidance is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. I have a plan, it's good. You can't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing, I must... Malfoy's voice trailed off. Is your father aware of your mission? Snape asked. Malfoy shook his head. Go back to your room. I have given a promise to your mother to help you do this right, and I'm not going to violate it. When Malfoy was gone, Snape stood on the spot and waited. It occurred to Harry that he was counting through his teeth, seconds or steps or something, and after a couple of minutes he talked. Take that blasted thing off. For a brief moment, Harry allowed himself the impossible hope that Snape was talking to himself and was not aware of his presence behind him. However, the soft sound of Snape's voice was burdened with a temper that Harry feared might burst if he didn't do as he was told. How did you know? He asked as he pulled the cloak off his head. You breathe loudly. Are you going to Dumbledore? Can I go too? I was going to my chambers, as a matter of fact, and you are not welcome. What? Malfoy basically told you. You must tell Dumbledore. What is his mission? What is he planning to do? You can't just ignore this like that. You must tell him. Are you aware of how disgustingly annoying you are, boy? If you're not going to do something about this, I will. Snape bared his teeth as he strode close and grabbed Harry by the neck. Harry yelped. Snape narrowed his eyes, which in the darkness of the night looked barely human. If you stick your nose in this, we will both die, and it will be quick. I assure you that even if we don't have to face the consequences of your endless stupidity, I will personally see that you have a slow and painful end. I will watch it happen, he hissed. And for the first time in months, Harry was afraid of Snape. The old certainty that Snape would definitely kill Harry if he could was now back. Snape pushed Harry back and turned around to leave. When he had reached the far end of the corridor, Harry heard the first bang from the clock tower. Happy New Year, then, he said loudly, making sure that his voice sounded confident. And although he didn't get an answer, when he returned to the fire-lit hearth in the great hall and sat on the stone floor, he found that the Gryffindor hourglass was slightly emptier than before. Shaking his head, he chuckled. What are you playing at? Nothing. I'm not lying. Give me that! Severus snatched the potions test from Potter's hands and looked at it. He read it carefully. You cheated. I didn't. Ask me anything you want. No, thank you. Allowing Potter to rub this on Severus's face wouldn't happen easily. Even better, it wouldn't happen at all. Horace was being soft on the boy and was falsely letting him believe that he was actually becoming good at potions. He wasn't, and Horace was a stupid man, a fact which was known since Severus's days as a student. He was the one who taught Severus the basics, but he possessed no knowledge beyond that. Severus knew what crept into the souls of those who secretly admired the dark arts while publicly pretended otherwise. The boy's complicated past was exciting Horace. He wanted to unfold it, know it, and suddenly Potter was good at potions. The invisible middle finger that had risen between Severus's eyes was so tangible that his hands twitched at the temptation to grab and break it. You're squinting, said Potter, grinning. I'm reading, Severus responded curtly. While he was failing to teach Potter the simplest things, the boy was succeeding rather enthusiastically on everything others were teaching him. And here Severus had thought that Potter's new motivation would make him pay some more attention in his class. Stop. I didn't cheat. You don't believe me? Even if I do, that's irrelevant now. Your potion's progress does no longer concern me. You failed in my exams, and this is what you should be worrying about. If you look forward to taking defense next year, I suggest that you study harder. Or should I say just study? The fact that he had failed a pretty unimportant defense examination shouldn't be enough to turn Potter into a big-eyed puppy. Then again, it was Severus's fault that the boy had knocked on his door on a Sunday evening to show him a test. Apparently, only when you absolutely need to and cannot do otherwise had been poorly comprehended. Still, Potter did make a habit of apologizing every time before stepping in, as though skinning his guilt off himself before moving ahead to shamelessly spend time with Severus was going to benefit Severus in the slightest. At least Potter's sleep had gotten better, or so he said. You graded the tests? Regrettably. How did I do? How did you do, Potter? You handed me over a blank sheet. I didn't. I wrote 3 paragraphs on question 5. Yes, although all it needed was a 10-word answer. You wrote 3 paragraphs on a subject that was entirely unrelated to the question. The corner of Potter's mouth twitched. Yeah, I liked that subject better. Then you will like your grade just as well. It was Potter who was running the school now, wasn't it? It should be second nature for Severus to kneel before him and kiss his hem. Hooray for the masters, for the strong ones. Perhaps he should host Potter a party, gather the staff, the portraits, filch, and make an accountable announcement of who was now the boss. He made a mental note of visiting Hogsmeade for conical hats and party horns first thing tomorrow morning. Potter fished a book out of his bag. Severus watched him, and he was momentarily stunned at the boy's nerve to bring books along for what was supposed to be a quick visit. Packing away the horrifying realization that the boy had simply used an excuse to see him once again, he cleared his throat and waved his wand at the hearth, renewing the fire. Potter's defense book was viciously thrown on Severus's lap, and Severus winced when it hit the wrong spot. Tell me what I don't get, then. Tell me what page the question's answer is on, or at least what kind of answer you were expecting. You have to stop waiting for me to guess what you mean for me to do when I don't get it right. It doesn't work that way. I could try for years, but with how you treat me, I would still be 10 steps behind and lost. And I still haven't forgotten how you abandoned my lessons just when I was starting to get better. If he'd refused to abandon them, he'd have to fight for them. And fighting was not something he did unless he cared. Making an effort so he could be burdened with Potter's insufferable companion again would be suspiciously excessive, let alone absolutely unwelcome. His animosity for Potter was not going to simply fame, not because of some tete-a-tetes that could only be described as a nightmare, not because Severus was committed to blindly follow Dumbledore's plans, and not because Potter wanted it. Severus disliked him, abhorred him. He stood. Get up! Potter did, although furrowing his brows. What, here? Now? Here. Now. I believe you said you've improved. Potter took out his wand and smiled, and all Severus could do was smirk back as he raised his own. Legilimens!